Шановні колеги, доброго дня. Ми продовжуємо.
Dear colleagues, we continue our work and we'll speak about EUEA in Ukraine, Biomass risk and opportunities. We'll have Jean-Marc Jossart, Secretary General, European Biomass Association. He will be with us on Skype. Svitlana Teush, PhD, Senior Associate Arzinger, will confirm. Maryna, Korniyenko, Manager of Insurance Department. Universal Insurance Brokers Consultants, Grygoruk, Advisor Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership, Mykola, Kolomyichenko, President of Ukrainian Pellet Union. Moderator, Naum Rikshpun, member of EUEA Board Partner Traficon. Colleagues, the floor is yours. Good afternoon. My name is Naum Rikshpun. I will be a moderator today. We begin the second event from a number of roundtables about renewable energy source risks and opportunities. The main task of this number of activities is to cover issues in the sector that should be solved in order to attract investments, to develop this sector according to ambitious plans for this sector. According to National Plan for Renewable Energy generation from renewable sources should grow up by 5.5 times, including biomass. It should be enlarged by 40 times. That is an ambitious task and that requires, modestly, without modernizing utilities, 17 billion euro. It's clear that to attract that number of that amount of investments, we need to create conditions. And our events describe current conditions, and also we will discuss what should be done to change circumstances. So I give the floor to Jean-Marc Jossart, Secretary General, European Biomass Association.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm very glad to be present virtually in your conference. Mm-hmm. Am I going to see my PowerPoint or not? I don't see it now. If not, I will continue. But do you see my PowerPoint now yourself?
Yes, we see your PowerPoint, and you will see it also in a minute.
Very good, very good. So I'm really glad that that Bioenergy is discussed intensively, apparently in Ukraine, as it is in Europe now, and for several reasons that I will explain you in a minute. First, let me introduce myself very briefly and my organization. We are working here for the European Biomass Association, EUEA, and we are representing the interest of the bioenergy sector, having two kinds of members. We have national biomass associations in Europe, in all countries, not yet Ukraine, but you are welcome to found an association in Ukraine and become member of IBM as well. And we also have companies that are member of IBM. Do you see that on your screen? I don't see it myself.
We can see it on the screen, but every time you need next slide, just please tell us next slide.
So if you could go on the slide about the Bioenergy facts, presenting the statistics. This is the fourth slide. There you see that the Bioenergy in Europe is increasing steadily. And we have now roughly a bit more than 100 million ton oil equivalent of bioenergy, and this is roughly 2/3 of renewable energy. Renewable energy in Europe is lying somewhere between 14 and 15% of the total energy consumption. So this is really very significant in Europe, and bioenergy is 2/3 of this. We know that in the sector is continuing to increase, and the target is to reach 140, something like 140 million ton oil equivalent of bioenergy in 2020. This is mainly used in the heating sector, followed by the transport sector, and finally electricity produced with biomass. The next slides present you an overview of the content of my speech. I will introduce you to a new concept that is developed in Europe. This is the Energy Union, because you might know that for the moment we have one main EU policy. This is the agriculture policy. But we realized in Europe recently that we have more and more concerns, for example, in terms of energy security, and we want a more united energy union. I will briefly discuss also the heat policy, the energy security issues, and finally, last but not least, the sustainability aspects. First, a target for 2020. In the next slide, we have discussed already the goals for the European Union after 2020. You might know that we already agreed upon a target of 20% renewables by 2020, and we have decided recently to have a target of 27% renewables by 2030. This is accompanied by another target for greenhouse gas reduction, minus 40%, and also a target for to reduce our energy consumption to an energy efficiency target. Compared to the past, we have a difference because up to 2020, the targets for renewables were mandatory, but now in the future for 2030, the targets will be voluntary. So we will depend much more on the member states to see how to reach these targets of 27%. If you go to the next slide about this energy union that I mentioned before, so the European Union would like a more resilient, a more stronger policy to stand the different dimensions in the future, the threats to our energy system. That is about energy security. We would like a more working internal market, because for the moment we have 28 member states, and each of these member states have different policies now. So we would like more harmonization in this. We would like more energy efficiency. We have a climate goal, so the idea here is to replace the intense carbon emitting fossil fuels by a low carbon economy, and bioenergy is part of this. And we would like to have also research and development aspects more financed. There are two key points for us. This is first the heating strategy. Heat was completely overlooked in the past. In the past, the European legislation was focusing on electricity and transport with minimum targets for transport. But this is a clear change now in the EU policy, and there will be more focus on the heating market that is finally consuming half of the energy in Europe. Half of the energy goes to heating and cooling aspects. And another aspect that I will also explain later on is the sustainability of biomass, because for the moment the biomass is intensively criticized at the European level for its environmental impact. The next slide shows the heat strategy, in fact, this will be a strategy that will influence different types of legislation, but I will not go into much details now. And you can directly go to the next slide. That shows the energy security and the graph showing the energy dependency we have towards national gas. And you see that just like for oil, for example, we have an increasing dependence on outside European Union countries, especially Russia, for our gas. And this trend is really increasing and becomes more and more worrying. And that's why we have more and more studies at the EU level, first showing the economic impact. We are importing in Europe 545 billions of euro of fossil fuels. This is 4% of our gross development product in Europe. And we need a strategy for this in the short term, in the medium term, how to switch the oil and gas and coal fossil fuel plants towards renewables and especially biomass. And we were especially concerned by the crisis between Russia and the Russia and Ukraine crisis, as we call it, and we made the European Commission made a stress test last year to assess the impact of a potential disruption of the gas supply for the European Union, and this was quite worrying for a lot of people. And so this work is still ongoing. I mean, how to go for a more secured market. The next aspect that is important for us for the moment is the biomass sustainability. This is a long story that started already at the end of the 90s, in fact, and we have now mandatory criteria, sustainability criteria for transport biofuels. And there are a lot of discussions for the moment about the sustainability criteria for solid biomass. For sure, we will have a legislation in the future in terms of harmonizations of these sustainability criteria, because we are importing more and more biomass for the moment from Russia, US, Canada, and other countries will follow. Why not Ukraine in the future? We are already importing pellets from Ukraine. But the European legislators, they want to ensure that this biomass is grown in a sustainable way. And the next slide shows that for the moment there are a lot of studies. I will not go into the details of this, but there are a lot of studies to evaluate the kind of criteria. We are discussing a lot also about the carbon impact. The use of the biomass should not decrease too much the carbon stock in the forest, for example. The use of biomass should not influence other wood industries in a bad way. This is also discussed in Brussels, led by NGOs. NGOs, by the way, this is the next slide, showing studies made by NGOs. And the next slide again, entitled Biomass Sustainability, an Ongoing Debate, is showing that the NGOs are really active in Brussels, trying to finally somehow destroy the image of bioenergy. It's a pity, but this is happening in Brussels, showing that we don't have enough biomass to fulfill our goals, and being very active on the social media as well. They want even to cap biomass, to have a maximum of bioenergy production in Europe, because according to them, biomass is bad for environment. The last slide is about biomass counts. So for us, of course, we don't agree with these messages. We really believe that biomass brings a lot of value added because we create jobs. We have already 500,000 jobs created in the biomass sector. That we are producing, of course, renewable energy, using an endogenous resource, and we can have a solution for climate change. I thank you for your attention. I hope it was interesting and gave you a flavor of what is discussed here in Brussels, and a flavor also of a growing market, and in the future the cooperation with Ukraine for the technology exchange of the biomass trade might be a key concern more and more in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jean-Marc.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Now we can ask our participants if they have any questions. Вопросы? Maybe then I have a question. Jean-Marc, how do you see the role of your organization in facilitating sort of ideas with the Ukrainian market players? Because as you mentioned, in Ukraine there is a vast resource of biomass that can of course be supplied to the European market. I mean, how do you see this whole dialogue taking place?
The dialogue, we have for the moment an excellent working network within IBM. We even have created different associations dedicated for the pellets, because when we are trading biomass, it's for the moment mainly pellets. So we are really exchanging statistics. We are exchanging. We have created a certification scheme for the quality of the pellets, and this is really going on. So I encourage the Ukrainian biomass. I don't know what kind of organizations you have in Ukraine, but you can definitely join IBM. We have key concerns to discuss about the quality of the biomass, trade barriers, the sustainability aspects that are really concerns for us as well.
I think, thank you. I think also one of the key issues is the transfer of knowledge and technology from Europe to Ukraine, because in Ukraine there's not a lot of experience in sustainable biomass development. And on the one hand, and also there's a lack of resources and financial resources to do all that's necessary to develop the market to a level where it can supply its own needs and fulfill its export potential. So I'm thinking if there's any kind of initiative, any kind of effort on the part of European market players to do that, and that's question number one. And question number two: how can that be? How can this be facilitated by your organization or with the participation of your organization?
Regarding the technologies and the way Ukraine would like to develop biomass, you should not misunderstand me as well. I mean, this is not only a question of exporting biomass from Ukraine to biomass. You should also see biomass as a development sector for your energy needs, definitely to fulfill your expectations and challenges in the energy and climate sector in Ukraine. And of course, there are a lot of companies in Europe that are definitely have acquired a knowledge in the last years, and that would be definitely definitely open for cooperation and invest in Ukraine. We have members situated. One of our directors is very frequently visiting Ukraine with the argument that there is a lot of benefits for rural development as well, and using indigenous resource of Ukraine instead of importing for you as well Russian gas. This is definitely one key advantage. In IBM, to answer your question as well about the networks, we have for the technologies platforms working at European level. We have a platform, a specific dedicated platform for renewable heating and cooling, where the technologies are discussed. The companies are part of this. So, if collaboration, there are a lot of opportunities. It's just, in 1 minute is complicated to explain that in details, but yes, there are opportunities for industry collaboration and research collaboration between Europe and Ukraine, for sure.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Next question.
My name is Sergey Chubanny. I'm Business Development Director, Institute of Technologies Transfers, Kyiv. Jean-Marc, tell me please, what is your vision for the biomass market development future in case of the tremendous decrease of the gas prices? You know that Russia now they officially announced that the prices for the end of the year will be at the level $240, $235, $250. It depends from the oil basket. So how you could command this? Thank you.
Yeah. This is not only a question for gas. The oil price is also decreasing quite a lot. It decreased in the last year. It's more or less half the price it was 1 year ago. And this is a challenge for biomass. But still, biomass is competitive, both for the households and for the larger users. We have statistics showing, for example, in the Baltic countries, that biomass used to be something like 3 times cheaper than gas, and now maybe it's about 2 times cheaper. But still, it's economic, and in fact. We think that of course the fluctuation of the fossil fuel price makes the low price temporary. On the longer term or in the medium term, definitely the price will most probably increase, and the energy investors should have a vision that is a medium-term vision, integrating also other aspects of energy into account, like the job creation and the fact you have a circular economy, that the money that the people are spending for energy is returning to Ukraine instead of going out of the country. So this is part of the whole story. But I agree with you that in some cases the profitability is not anymore what it was 1 year ago, for example.
Jean-Marc, thank you very much. More questions, anybody? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your inputs.
No, you're welcome. Thanks a lot for your help. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you allow me, I'd like to grant the word to give the floor to Svitlana Teush, PhD, Senior Associate, Genizia law firm, who knows the Ukrainian context as regards of legislative amendments and changes. Naum, thank you so much. Hello to everyone, to those present here, those who listen to us. The legal company which is actively participating in different discussions and events related to energy topic. We would like to highlight, I'd like to call it a boom, both legislative and governmental as regards of public opinion pertaining to the use of renewable energy sources, and in general the problematics of energy sector, we may have different assessment of the rate of changes in energy sector. No doubt this is a complicated process with different interests being involved, but we are quite optimistic. This active discussion of the problem and legislative activities witnesses that energy is viewed, is considered as a part of problematics of state security and state sovereignty. What was mentioned by Jean-Marc may be applicable to Ukraine, if to speak about Ukraine's dependence on import of natural gas. And it is impossible to substitute this natural gas, but we are speaking about diversification of sources, reduction of dependence, and increase in specific gravity of renewable sources in general energy consumption. I would also like to come back to the previous slide and tell you that we have 11% of renewable sources, if to speak about total volume of consumption up to 2020, but we are not sure that this figure will not be reconsidered. We have to understand what the rates of sector development would be after signing new law 2010. And within the broader context, the energy efficiency problem must be viewed and implemented within the legal field, as well as within the everyday life, because renewable energy sources constitute just a part of a global problem. Why bioenergy is now in the focus of all the discussions pertaining to energy sector? First of all, the answer is this is a resource which is quite affordable, quite accessible, especially if to speak about Ukraine's condition, having powerful agricultural and industrial complex, powerful forestry resources, waste management resources, and renewable resources use. And need in the use of bioenergy is related to the fact that economic entities and state structures need to optimize their structures of energy use. First of all, we're not speaking about export and external markets, but namely about the local optimization within the level of enterprises, state enterprises, municipalities, and so on and so forth. And now this issue is becoming more and more important and topical in the cross-section of Ukraine's decentralization course. And if to speak about other advantages of bioenergy, they are evident. That is competitiveness in price forming, as well as ecological advantages. It depends on the source, but we have to consider them more closely. So then, if we speak about legislative regulation within the sphere of renewable energy sources, we have to consider stimulation. Now, this topic is quite urgent because Parliament has signed 2010D law, and there are all chances that, well, it was just discussed, there are all chances it will be signed. I'm not sure whether it is worth to tell you about the novelties introduced by this very law, but the green tariff is preserved there. It is granted up to 2030. There is linkage to euro. And there are appropriate guarantees as regards of usage volume, and a range of other amendments you may see. If to speak particularly about biomass, it is vital that Now there is a notion of biomass written in the legislation as it is practiced in Europe, and it includes not only waste but products and remains of agricultural activities, industrial activities, which allows introducing those segments which previously were neglected. Pellets, for example. And there is quite a favorable coefficient of green tariff was set. I'd like to tell you it may be considered as even too high. Here you may see the decisive factor for the coefficient is the date of commissioning, of equipment commissioning. Then, if to speak about requirement of local component, it was neglected as well, because this component did not allow the sector to develop, and there were key debates around this very issue. Now we have this surcharge approach, as you may see on the slide, so it depends on the level of equipment usage. We speak of equipment of Ukrainian manufacturer. And it complies with best practices of international development of the sector. I would like also to highlight that green tariff is applied to those commissioned stations and licensed companies. There is no such notion as requalification, which would allow us to understand at the very first stage how to use the green tariff, how to attract investment. So these spheres aren't developed so far, but I believe this is just an issue of future. At first, we may evaluate positively this very law. Here you may see some limits and some criteria used or applied to the green tariff. We should say that after 2024, those commissioned stations will not be working on green tariff, but I believe that legislation will be amended and changed till then. And if to speak about level of, if to speak about applicable, how to put this properly, depending on the equipment, different shares may be used to assess the equipment produced by Ukrainian manufacturers. Also, we have to mention that we expect plenty of sub-laws, and it is vital for all the actions, all the initiatives stipulated by this law to be implemented and not to be neglected, for us not to have gaps. So we expect a range of sub-laws, and we'll be keeping an eye on this process. If to speak about implementation of the project within the sphere of bioenergy, a lot depends on type of the source, on the stage of implementation, on prognosticated or forecasted capacity. It is difficult to give some universal pieces of advice, but if to have a look at our experience of work within different projects, we have to single out different areas. First of all, we speak about the initial stage, selection stage. We have to verify the active status, the story behind this status, because we do not want to allow any deficiencies, any defects related to previous right owners. They may cast shadow on the project, and new owners, we have to understand that. And no doubt, target purpose of the land plot must be considered, because there was a range of cases when bioenergy projects require new infrastructure, logistics. It must be foreseen within the project, and we must have this complex approach to the issue. I do not think it is worth mentioning relations between partners, because when we have joint implementation of the project, the parties try to implement some approaches which are not applicable to Ukrainian law. For example, several participants want to create a joint venture to jointly make all the decisions. It would be a difficult approach to implement because we have other corporate approaches in Ukraine, also agreement base, its formation, what must be taken into account. Very often partners offer their own contracts, their own agreements, and they would like to urge this process to sign the contract as soon as possible, especially when they have agreed all the commercial interests. But have a thorough look what you signed, because very often the provisions contained in this contract will hinder you using the warranty right, and will lead to definite losses of some advantages when you sell the project. Or, for example, within the acceptance procedure, you sign the document, but you fail to verify presence of defects, then you will lose a lot. In our recent practice, we had cases when the supplier supplied, there were some conditions which were not feasible, and the contract was threatened. So nothing must be ignored. There may be even complicated cases when obligations are of mixed type and are redistributed between the parties, especially when we speak about long-term contracts. There were disputes related to the issue that boiler equipment appeared to be broken, and the participants or the parties to the contract tried to find faults, and there was the construction engineer expertise which found that the reason was in initial data. There were erroneous parameters set within the specific project documentation. And no doubt, also we have a space to work, and the following 2 slides will show you a list of different vital issues. Now, when we have hope for stability, for transparency of legislation, we have to keep the process going, including reforming of the market and shifting to balanced market. We have to continue the process of deregulation, which currently takes place, simplify different procedures as regards of land allocation and construction. And one more problem is related to network connection. It is no secret that there are plenty of arguments, disputes as regards of these problematics, and maybe there must be some non-discriminatory access. We have to create a transparent picture as regards of network's capacity, and maybe to have an expertise and compensation of expenditures with increase in connection capacity. So to say that those are the main issues I'd like to highlight. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Ми можемо задати всі питання в кінці.
You can ask all the questions in the end. Okay. And I give the floor to Maryna Korniyenko, head of the Department on Insurance, Universal Insurance's Brokers and Consultants. Thank you, Naum. Maryna Korniyenko, thanks. I would like to thank you all. And to continue the previous press conference today, I would like to focus on what can be insured, which risks can be insured by energy in Ukraine. Of course, for every project, for every enterprise, They develop separate proposals, but in general we can single out two phases. Two phases. Insurance and project phase and operational phase. If project designing phase is classical, requires classical insurance with some specifics and includes insurance of design, construction, responsibility, staff, ensuring delays of the beginning and equipment and its delivery. In more details, I would like to speak about operational phase, because here the biggest value for enterprises is in equipment and ready products. An example, not from biomass, but from enterprises that have that are hazardous in terms of fire hazardous, and everybody knows about this oil-based BRSM. There were not very pleasant events recently, but no equipment, neither equipment nor product were insured. That's why the company lost $10 million that could be compensated by the insurance company. That's why here, once again, enterprises that are fire hazardous should insure ready products and also equipment. In details, I would like to consider the insurance of the equipment, because in a classical policy, insurance of property is covered only external influence on equipment. If we speak about equipment which is in use at the production site, there you should consider internal reasons, effects that can lead to break-in or destroyment of this equipment. Insurance of production equipment that came out at the end of the 19th century as a result of progress. They used boilers, and when there was an explosion in a boiler, and insurance contract covered all the damages to the equipment and assets around the boiler, but expenditures for renovation or replacement of the boiler, that was not covered. That's why I underline insurance of from break-in the production equipment, because the processes that are taking place at production site related to biomass, they are fire hazardous, so it's better to ensure internal effects which are sometimes not predictable in processes that are combined in the process of production can lead to results that bring to insurance cases, insurance events. I would like to underline insurance of a break in production. Everybody knows that it provides compensation of the profit of an enterprise if there is any damage to assets, if an enterprise is idle and they need time to repair, to renovate equipment and premises that requires time and money. As insurance policy or contract of the break in production, it compensates losses and also compensates under-received profit. Also, I wanted to add, maybe from experience, of bioenergy associations of Europe and Canada, and a lot of attention is paid to fire security, because a lot of insurance events and the most costly events that they happen because it's around fire, explosion, and incitement. That's why associations foreign they pay a lot of attention to fire security of facilities by energy, and also they developed even some norms and standards that allow to extinguish fire in a very short time with a very easy approach to the facility, and those standards should be taken into consideration when you invest and also when there is a construction of enterprises all over the world. Also, I would like to add that in general, there is a specific approach to insurance of bioenergy enterprises because they are not global, they're not big in Ukraine. That's why I love a collective it's when collective responsibility. We can ensure quality of products over separately, but also we can ensure a general responsibility or collective responsibility, and that's the first point, and that improves our status of enterprises that produce biomass in Ukraine, and also that reduces expenditures for insurance, because insuring every separate enterprise, it's much more expensive than when you insure several enterprises at the same time or as a group. And I would like to add that because we emphasize on investment in Ukraine, I wanted to add that our activity is related to companies that invest in Ukraine, and foreign companies like BRR and others, they have very tough requirements to insurance because having experience of cooperation with enterprises for many years, they have their own pictures, they have understandable reputation. Though we are working on that issue, and there are some other variants, insurance. How to give guarantees to investors that they can develop their business in Ukraine, and if something goes wrong, they can get some compensation, some payments. In the end, I wanted to add there are some details of this insurance market, and there is something to work on. There are products of insurance products that don't exist in Ukraine at all. They must be created and developed and take into consideration the experience of our foreign partners, and that requires some time. But as I told you at the beginning, for every project, we develop a separate proposal. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Thank you. I give the floor to Ivan Grygoruk, Advisor, Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership. Good afternoon. Ivan Grygoruk, Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership. Today, as a part of the conference, I will speak about the initiative. Because we don't have a lot of time, we will skip a legal component. My colleagues told you about that, and the government developed and they described some measures in the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine and the National Action Plan on Renewables up to 2020. And regulation of the Cabinet of Ministers 453 on the replacement of natural gas during the production of biomass, and as a part of of this legislation, and in addition to the fact that Ukraine is trying to decentralize the state, made a decision to create regional energy clusters in Ukraine, which is quite a good mechanism, and that will provide to every region in particular, from production to consumption. So now, in details. Since May, this consortium of Ukrainian consortium with energy efficiency structure, we decided to create a pilot and in 3 regions: Khmelnytsky, Rivno, and Vinnytsia regions, where we will develop a mechanism and how these classes will work in general, and that will be applied later with all over Ukraine. The principle is that in every region, with the state support, we create a public-private company, or maybe it will be partnership, which will have contracts with the state owners of raw materials, and it will create a necessary base and will provide certificates to raw materials according to international standards. And that's very important. Why? Because biomass is not certified. There are international standards in Europe, and to which we're trying to achieve in order to certify according to that standard all biomass. Also, storage of raw materials, and my colleague spoke about that, and biomass, especially grain, they're quite dangerous and quite hazardous. That's why we need to pay attention to that issue. That company will have contracts with different consumers of raw materials. And what I mean, local companies for generation, Oblteplоэнерго, Gor, companies, heating companies, and that switch from gas to alternative fuels. Why? Because here we need to pay attention to logistics, and logistics includes 2 aspects: technical support, I mean equipment, which would allow to collect that biomass in the forest, to deliver it to producers, which would help us to store that biomass, and certain for non-stop work of different boilers. And then burning. In every region it is planned to achieve these tasks in 3 years period, 1 or 3 years. Because if to provide the full cycle, growing, processing, and consumption of biomass, then solvency it takes paying back will happen in 3-5 years, depending on the project. What our expectations? Replacement of when we introduce projects of replacement, if it is 250 million cubic gas, replacement of 70 gas boilers, big boilers, and 30 million of investments, and those are primary investments that will grow later. And approximately about 10 million euro, that's what we save every year with that replacement that I mentioned. Also, we create about 5,000 jobs. Direct in the whole line, from growing up to consumption. In addition to that, there is a political positive component. We are not paying for purchasing gas, so we are not paying currency. And economic attractiveness of regions is growing because there will be new jobs, new taxes, and social support is better in those regions. So, in principle, that's it. If there is any question, maybe later you can. Questions, please, in the end of the briefing. We'll continue the briefing. Ivan, thank you very much. I give the floor to Mykola, Kolomyichenko, President of Ukrainian Pellet Union. Good afternoon. Now in our country, during the energy collapse, which happened because we are very much dependent on important energy sources, war, occupation of resource-based regions, the use of solid biomass started to grow. We have about 50 enterprises that produce pellets and pellets from the different sources and solid. And these enterprises started to grow, and the consumption of biomass started to grow also. And we observe positive dynamics, and there are more projects and to replace natural gas with local resources and biofuel in the budgets everywhere, in all the sectors, private and public. All the economy of Ukraine is using actively, or there are projects to replace gas, natural. What are the advantages of biomass comparing to traditional fossils economically? For example, the cost of the pellet produced from natural gas is about 900 hryvnia. The cost of gigacalorie from pellets, and for example, wood pellets, and that is the highest, the most expensive. It's 520 hryvnia, 200. We have double economic effect, and also we reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And the EU, when they began all the programs on renewables since 2000 until now, they reduced emissions by 20%, almost, just because they introduced renewables, biomass, biofuel. Those are local, regional resources, so they are within a short distance. It's not centralized supplies that can be stopped, or the price can grow, and that's very important for our country these days. These are low, and also it means new jobs, infrastructure, and in the end, this formation of the culture of energy consumption from local resources. And that's very important when we speak about decentralization of regions and and rational use of resources. That is independence from important energy. So the money stays in regions and local communities, and they can use more of that. As to the resource we have at present, Ukrainian professional says we have about 30 million tons of biomass. Renewables every year that can be used to produce solid biofuel, and we can replace with gas from 4 or 5 million tons hot wood biomass and waste of labor and also from agriculture. Wood can be burned and can be used as raw material for biomass. So we have about 13 million cubic meters per year. That's an annual renewable resource without any damage to the nature, because now there are slogans that when we introduce biofuel, there will be a lot. Hard fuel means biofuel means the processing of waste, especially from the lumber industry, and that's what we are talking about. That waste which is left and which is not used, and so that is they make damage without any benefit. So the presentation is. I'll show you dynamics of the growth of production of trends, growth, production of it's about pellets and the briquettes from agriculture and also from lumber waste. By the way, in Ukraine at present, as I told you, 350 enterprises that produce hot biofuel. They produce this number of this amount compared to 2011. We see last year almost double growth of production. That's because of the demand for export. European Union, and they started to consume more, and for European consumers that was very necessary. So there was export, big demand for pellets. They started a lot of new prices started to come up. Comparing to 2011, when the main export, when the production of hot salt biofuel was focused at export, compared to the previous year, we see that internal market is growing. So they are almost on the same level this year, according to our estimations, and they will be on the same level. So there will be 50-50. On the level. That's a very positive dynamic for the development of this market, and the trade network is the same like for the export trade network. So Ukraine producers, if they don't take money out of the country, abroad, it doesn't matter for them where to supply, and there are pellets that are exported, and there are conditions and requirements there to quality. Pellets should be certified, meet European standards and sustainability and criteria of sustainability and quality, and they cannot provide pellets that meet all the standards. For internal market, Ukraine is very good because a big number, we have a big resource of hot biofuel that can be used to replace natural gas. Then, what my colleagues told you about the national plan on renewables, and this is about biomass. We have in heat and growth of use of biomass by 3.5 times comparing to 2009, and practically by two times. And we see a trend that there's active policy on using biomass as a carrier for heating. In energy producing in megawatts, we see there's a growth by 20 times, 22 times. Comparing to the last year even. Comparing with this year, we have growth by 4 times. And as to, there is that biofuel is used, liquid biofuel, that is, so there is a national plan of the government, and the government obliges, because that plan meets European requirements of reduction and the strategy 2020 of Europe, a growth of reduction of emission and growth of energy renewables. And the government will support renewables. This is about price for pellets, and there are a lot of questions to this dynamic of growth compared to 2007. In light green, that is 2007, prices for pellet and violet, prices for 2014. So two indicators, price of 2007 and for 2014, as in euro. Such dynamic of growth of the price is formed because of export demand. When we had open when markets started to get open, the price started to grow, because before, as I told you, we had export-oriented production, but it doesn't matter how it looks like. But in Europe, the price for for solid biofuel is static, so there is not a lot of fluctuation, maybe 10% seasonal. But if we take a period for 10-15 years, and we see that it's not important, because pellets, like all the energy sources, and they have different in index. There are stocked in index of stock markets, and they have some limitations. So to say that there will be a growth of cost for biofuel is impossible. Even if we didn't have it, it is connected to energy indicators. And if we take, for example, price for gas in Ukraine 4 years ago, and compare pellets and gas, the same. We have the same correlation now. If we look at index, correlation index. This is dynamics of growth of industrial sector and the number of enterprises compared to 2011. In fact, some in wood pellets, we have 5 times growth of number of enterprises or producers. Agro pellets, and that is sunflower and straw. There is the number of enterprises went up, and it's because in agrarian sector there is limited access to raw materials, not to volume, but just to it's there are regional, but the amount of production is growing. I showed those pellets. That is internal market and consumption. According to the regulator, the number of those enterprises that are registered or who have licenses to produce it, it's the number of bolos, the capacity of these bolos, and also breakdown by biofuel, which is used there. There is not complete data because this is only about those who are licensed by the regulator and heat supplies. Those who use that for their own needs, and that's a lot of enterprises. They are not included. We can say that at present we have about the same number of capacity or high capacity that is used in industry for domestic needs, and this active development. We started to use technologies such Ukrspeed and technology of production, and they switched to gas, and we invited different producers, and there are a lot of enterprises who think about using solid biofuel. This is how it will grow compared to this year until 2020. This is according to National Action Plan, and according to that dynamic, we have such prognosis. So by 2 times, 3 times, and there will be those who will produce hot fuel. This is prognosis of growth, of production growth. As I told you, according to the national plan and according to the demand on the market with the centralized energy supplies, and to satisfy our needs, we have such. There are a lot of questions, and we see the calculation of that's for a private house. In a commercial sector, it will be even higher. The difference between traditional energy. Pellet is in green color here, so you can see economically. If we speak about the previous year, when the price for gas, what were the subsidies population, we didn't have that. It was not beneficial to install equipment. Now the situation has changed, and we see this picture. So colleagues also told there are ways how to motivate production of biomass, and there is a program to cover 20% of loans that people take for biofuel boilers. Competition of 2 OSBBs or to condominium said that introduce energy efficient activities, and that will replace natural gas. So 30% of compensation. The law 2010 was mentioned by my colleagues. I will not speak about that. And now in the Cabinet of Ministers, the situation to compensate for equipment for production of biofuel. Regulations were mentioned here, and they were discussed in committees. They were supposed to be discussed, but they didn't discuss them because they did not agree on with the cabinet, with the Ministry of Finances. But those are very important things, and we hope that they will be brought very soon. And there is a national action plan. We spoke about that. What's the problem? Very difficult access to it's about we have state monopolies, state agencies of forest resources. Only they can sell. In 2012, producers of hot solid biofuel, they were not allowed to purchase raw materials for their production. If you look at those slides, there was a decline of production. Now introduced the interest of those interests started that it started to change, but I cannot say that it is changed, but something is done. So the simplified access to raw materials by producers of solid biomass, and there are initiatives, and so there will be a simplified access to the market, and also absence of standards. It's very important. That reduces export, and also that is when the consumers are not protected from low quality products. And there are a lot of cases when they supply not good quality products. We don't have standards of quality, and there is no broad certification. Pellet Union developed the system of certification Ukrainian, which is based on new European standards, and so the picture is important. Also, no benefits for generating equipment. Last year, all factories in Ukraine that produces generating equipment from house and for industry, they had orders for half a year, 8 months. Last year, we could introduce more than 60% of projects of replacement we provided with equipment, and investors or clients could invest their own money, and they could run those projects. Ukrainian enterprises cannot cover the demand for heat generating equipment. The best decision would be to cancel or to introduce benefits for bringing that equipment from abroad. And all of us, we know the situation. I'm surprised that nobody speaks about that. Complete misunderstanding between Ministry of Energy, and also we know the situation with the law 2010 when they demanded to stop green tariffs and the development of renewables. The situation is the same. And I believe this is a big problem we are facing, and this is a very important factor which does not allow to develop renewables in Ukraine in general. And very difficult access to resources. There will be more projects and related to renewables. We had access to long-term loans. That's what I wanted to tell. If there is any question. Thank you very much, Mykola. Now questions. If there's any question, raise your hand and use the microphone. Introduce yourself.
Інститут трансферів технологій. У мене питання.
I have a question to Mr. Grygoruk as regards of these 3 projects you've mentioned on the regional clusters. As you've highlighted, they would be implemented based on state support. Could you be more specific? What kind of state support are we speaking about? Well, mainly there is support on the legislative level, on the administrative level, on the regional one. We may not speak about implementation of any project without their support. What is more as regards of attracting investments from abroad. Moreover, regional, so to say, regional authorities may participate in such projects having from 10 to 20%. As I've mentioned, this is within PPP approach, private-public partnership. If we'll have a look at the same line, for example, there was an access to studying technological road maps, to cutting wood in forests, to technological maps of growing different cultures, different agricultural goods, agricultural types of biomass. Besides, currently there was research of land's marginality that is carried out on support of the state. The state is the main, so to say, holder of land bank. The same pertains to the local allocation, if to speak about logistics system. So in fact, and I believe my colleagues will support me in this, namely biomass is feasible, its use is feasible, if to speak about shifting from natural gas, only in case if consumption does not exceed 40 kilometers, or when the point of consumption is not located more than 40 kilometers from the place where it is grown. So there is an issue of centralized hubs for it to be easier to ensure, so to say, safety on storage, locally produced biomass, if we speak about wood, straw, and so on and so forth, and subsequent processing. And every generating enterprise, and such enterprises usually do not have those sites to store, so to say, to store biomass, because it is necessary to store this fuel for a week or two for non-stop work of this or that boiler house. We speak both about state enterprises, private enterprises. We must take into account the location, and these hubs will address the issue. First of all, it will allow reducing the cost of biomass production, because there is this big hub and its servicing costs less than the specific volume divided by 10 or more parts. Besides, there is state support and local authorities support. We speak about the same vertical so far, because the state and local authorities are aiming at re-equipping from gas boilers to appropriately alternative fuel boilers. And this is a tendency which is there, because taking into consideration the fact that they find money to re-equip 10–30% out of total consumption, previous consumption. That would be my answer. I would like to add, because I had something to do with the project as well. I'll put it plainly. There is this huge resistance within the state level as regards of any initiatives related to transfer to renewable energy sources. The motivation is clear. If to put it plainly, there are plenty of sieves within this level. Well, if it's clear for me, this gesture is clear for me to speak about gas, but I do not understand. Why are you using this gesture now? So, as a state is the main holder and the main consumer of biomass, without any state support in organizing cooperation between holders and consumers, well, it would be impossible. The money must come from the private sector, but in order to attract money from the private sector, there must be some definite legislative base, not just administrative pressure. So our task is to make the local authorities to sign appropriate contracts to make it work. So the state is like an intermediary, like an agent between the private investor and all the state structures. That is sad, but that is the reality. I would like to finish. Also, there is a technical issue if to speak about equipment and so on and so forth. So, as we mentioned previously about hubs and some separate equipment, the process is coordinated within some area, maybe 50 kilometers from the consumer up to the producer. And here we see the same services provided by one operator or several operators providing logistics services, because it is not feasible for everyone to buy the equipment. It would be too expensive. There is no sense to invest in this. Please give me 2 more minutes. My colleagues mentioned it has a major influence on the sector development, that is insurance of regions with biofuel. The previous year and the year before the previous one, there were questions where to get the biofuel. We know where to get the coal, for example, but what pertains to biofuel, yes, it is there, but it is a bit virtual. Starting from the previous year, we have developed and introduced the biofuel logistics program on ensuring with pellets, with fuel bricks. My colleagues even went further. They took care about growing, processing. When we faced this issue, we decided to create this opinion that biofuel is in short access. It pertains to individuals, to everyone. We may take, for example, supermarkets in Germany. When you enter the supermarket, you see pellet, you see fuel brick. Usually Germans just order these pellets and fuel bricks from specialized centers. The same we see at the petrol stations. So now we have this information field, information space. We have set the task and we try to implement those tasks. So now we have to provide people with information as regards of using. There must be understanding that biofuel is accessible. It is around you. That is vital for development of this sector. Our experts came up to conclusion. We do not just supply biofuel. There must be special centers on energy efficiency, and our experts were trained by Italian and European experts. For a person who wants to consume, to use biofuel, to have the complete package of services. For this person not to think where to get the biofuel, what to do when I take the loan, when I'm granted the state loan. So our main task is to provide the complex information and a package of services to Ukrainian consumer. Thank you so much. Next question, please. I have a question to you. Romatsky from Electro Project. We had discussions previously in the internet. You paint a beautiful picture with this story about pellets. I'm impressed, and I was impressed when you were comparing it to energy sector. I do not want to have a dispute with you, because we will have this very strong dispute. I would like to ask you, if these pellets are developing that actively, I believe that Ukraine will become, so to say, bold up to 2030. I know what you are going to answer. I have just another question. The whole Europe, they have a roadmap on energy efficiency. You not refuse, yes, from this doctrine. There are main documents which stipulate development of energy efficiency. Those are directives number 27. Have you read directive number 27? It says nothing about pellets. Well, if we speak about Directive 27, it pertains to energy efficiency. Directive 28 pertains to some other issues. I understand you. This is just a regular question. We hear such questions very often. Directive number 27, some previous directives, Directive 32, they do not split between the renewable energy sources and pellets. When we speak about energy efficiency, we speak not only about comfort level, they predetermine ecological requirements. If we manage to reduce harmful emissions to the environment, that is also an energy efficiency, and Plan 2020 European strategy is included into such energy efficiency strategy, and it stipulates reduction of emissions. You mentioned that Ukraine will be bold. I mentioned previously you were inattentive. I highlighted that we have to use waste. We do not have to cut more forests. And if we will lack the biomass, we'll be growing biomass. We'll create special ranges to grow biomass. That is decided within the level of Bank of Reconstruction and Development. There are such criteria of bioresource in Europe, in the whole world. This resource has a huge impact. In Sweden, in Poland, they are using special agricultural plants only when they have used their biological resources completely. I've mentioned that in Ukraine we have 30 million per year. We use to the maximum extent 3.5 million, so just 12%. We have this huge potential of using agricultural waste and lumber processing waste. And this reserve is 90%. When we reach this percentage, and when we have no additional resource, there will be a problem. To tell you more, I protect this sector and I have access to information, to documentation of State Agency of Forestry. So as of today, in the whole world, there is a concept that admissible forest cuts amount to 15% out of yearly growth. As of now, we cut only 7% in Ukraine. We did not even reach the admissible level, which is recognized globally. And now we are growing plenty of agricultural products. Now we do not see reduction, we just see increase in percentage of biomass. If to speak about resources we had back in 2000 and those we have now, we see 25% biomass increase in Ukraine. There is no critical situation in this country. I'm not a person from the industry who is interested in cutting or burning down all the forests. We're interested in processing wastes. When we burn such waste, we receive heat, but it is cheaper than the price of gas. So this is my concept, and this is not a proper use of our resources we have in Ukraine. That is our problem. We cannot properly use what is around us. We expect something from an uncle or from Russian Federation. I beg your pardon, we do not have debates here, this is just briefing. Mr. Naum, I would like to add to what was mentioned by my colleague. Recently I saw statistics about waste, about biomass waste. We have enough of it to shift from gas, to be transferred from gas. We speak only about waste. We do not speak about growing special products. Yes, that is what we mentioned. We have to have appropriate logistics. We do not have to cut down more forests. During the first year, we will not reach the same volumes, and we cannot refuse from 9 billion tons of gas we use from the Russian Federation. This is an issue of perspective. This may not be done in 1 year. Now we shall have questions and answers session. Please give an opportunity to our speakers to answer. Please be disciplined, Mr. Ivan. Yes, to proceed, we speak about a plan, that is 2020 plan. So we do not plan to change the situation in a year, to cut down all forests in Ukraine. We must have a technological roadmap. We must understand the quality of land. There is plenty of marginal land where the acidity is too high. Nothing can be grown there. Those plots will be used to grow energy cultures, fast-growing cultures. It takes them 1 or 2 years to be grown. The next year you may harvest them and use for shifting from gas. That will be done not in a year, but up to 2020, and will not finish in 2020. We will not start consuming gas in 2020. Finland, Sweden, all the countries are engaged in this process so far, and they have no problems with gas as we do. And the consumption of energy resources is 4 times lower. Let's have some other questions. If to speak about raw materials used for biofuel, in Europe there are criteria of sustainability of raw material source. There must be a certification of such raw materials. We have the same approach in Ukrainian certification standards. Do you understand what I'm saying? Every biofuel produced must be confirmed by due diligence criteria. There is no such situation when the manufacturer may take some smuggled raw materials. Everything is checked up, everything is controlled. There are criteria of forest sustainability. Those issues may be addressed as well. And I have one more comment. I do not tell you that biofuel is the best approach. I tell you that every region must use local regional resources. That may be coal, that may be straw, that may be wood or lumber. So every region must use appropriate, feasible resources. Every region must develop its own strategy of energy policy, as it was done in Germany or in Holland. And they were based on the availability of resources. We speak about rational use of resources. That would be all. We have time just for one question left, maybe some specifications, clarifications from the audience. You're welcome.
Доброго дня, Володимир Петренко.
Good afternoon. A question to Mykola. In your presentation, I heard that in Ukraine, practically, we don't have an enterprise that provide a European quality of pellets. Is it true? Yes. Correct. Why do we have such high expert? Is it to you or how? I will give you my business card, or send me a letter. But I will answer to what you asked me. Expert, very big expert, was because Polish and Czech traders, and they for buy-in. European Pellet Council reacted to those cases, and they took measures for this. They took Ukrainian pellets, factored that is satisfied according to European standards, and they were selling in Europe. If it's about supplies and direct supplies from Ukraine producers, none of them, 95% of them don't have contracts. Why? Because the technology to get raw materials to produce pellets is different in Ukraine from European. In Europe, technology of wood processing or lumber processing, the first operation is you have to take a bark off the bark goes to waste, so it is burned for heat, which is necessary to dry. Then the computer looks at that log and it takes all extra. Not like in Ukraine. Our technology is what it took away from the third operation. That is just has no bark, no mechanical. That is pure saw, and it doesn't have any mechanical additions. Here, how it works? So they take a log, they cut it, then waste, which goes in Ukraine, goes with bark, with sand. That's why it's so very low quality. So these are technological conditions. Equipment could be the best, but the raw material on the input is not perfect. But in Odessa, for example, they produce pellets, and they produce real pellets according to European standards. And what do they do? It's wood processing enterprise, and they have a special line, Italian lines, which technologically meets those they have in European Union. Otherwise, it must be, and they just get pure raw material, and they have very good equipment, and they produce very good pellet, and they are the best in Ukraine. Thank you very much. The time is over, and but you can continue communication with the experts unofficially. And our working day is over, and the schedule will be on our website by the end of the day. Thank you very much, and see you. Thank you.